the next trait of toxic people is they are controlling. They're controlling. But control doesn't have to be with a fist. Control doesn't have to be with my arm grabbing you and making forcing you to do something. It doesn't mean I push. Those are forms of control. That's physical violence. That's physical intimidation. Control can be that I control the money. I control the kids. I control whether you work or not. I control what you do with your money. I control what goes on in this house. I heard someone say today that one of the greatest ways of living life is serving. And he was kind of picking on husbands about husbands serving their wives. He goes, there's this element of the church that teaches, the woman's to submit. He goes, and for most men in the church, he goes, that's the only verse they know in the Bible. You're supposed to submit. He said, but what about the verse? I said, yeah, but you're supposed to love your wife as Christ loved the church, right? You're supposed to love to the point of death. They don't know that verse, but they know the submit verse. And he talks about how a lot of men come home, right? And they expect their wives to do the cooking, the cleaning, all of those kinds of things. And what does he get to do? Whatever he wants. That's not serving. That's using your role and position to control another. And I love what this person said. He goes, if you're that kind of man, he said, let me help you out. Just hire a maid, because that's what maids do. That's what servants do. You hire people. Molly may will do that for you. But your spouse is not that kind of a person to be treated that way. And I agree. I know that in my home, I can push a vacuum cleaner. I can wash dishes. I can do those things just as much as Luella can. I hate making beds, but I make the bed all the time for the most part. Why? Because it's something that I do that when my wife does it, she feels valued by, right? She feels valued. She feels important. She feels like she matters. Controlling people don't consider your thoughts. They don't consider your feelings. They don't consider your needs. It's really all about them. And they can control in overt ways, and they can control in passive aggressive ways, which was me in my early years of marriage. One of the ways that I would do that, if I didn't get my need for affection met, I want Love to hold my hand or give me some attention, and she didn't do it. I was mostly a child, and so I'd cop an attitude. And I'd go sit on the couch and I would sulk. I'm not proud of what I'm telling you, folks, but I would sulk. 2 hours, she'd see me just sitting there looking at TV, doing this kind of stuff. She asked me a question, I give her one word answer. I'm not proud of it, but it was the best I had based on what I was raised with, being raised by not healthy, mature adults, right? Can't raise someone to be something that you're not. You can only raise people to be what you are. What was I doing? I was trying to control her in a passive aggressive way. You can control by playing like you're a victim, acting like you're a martyr. You can control in so many different ways. Whining, sulking, forgetting. Oh, I forgot. No, you didn't. You're just mad. They're going to control you some way, be it passively aggressive or overtly aggressive. And again, remember, everything we're talking about is a pattern of behavior, right? And the next thing is kind of self-realized. The next trait is they're highly selfish. Life is about them. In other words, they're the center of the world. Toxic people, they're the center of the world, and you exist for them. It's like you're the rings that run around Saturn, and they're the planet. And you exist for them, but they don't necessarily exist for you. The next trait, I'm going to go heavy into it, is they're selfish. Humility is not something that they can attain to or aspire to as long as they're in their toxic way of being. And the last trait of toxic people is they're disagreeable. They don't want to understand you. They don't want to understand your thoughts. They don't want to understand your feelings. They don't even want to hear your perspective. Matter of fact, your perspective means nothing to them. What does matter is their perspective. Their perspective of reality is the only perspective there is. Your perspective of reality doesn't matter. What I mean by that? People say there's multiple realities out there, right? And the reality is there's only one reality. It's only one reality, but there's different perspectives of that reality. In other words, let's say the reality of dog. I want one really bad. My wife does not want one really bad. We have two very different perspectives. Let's say this thing is dog. She has a perspective around dog, and I have a perspective around dog. But her perspective is very different than mine because her experience with dogs in childhood was very different than my experiences. And because our experiences are different, we don't agree about this issue of dog, you see? But toxic people will never want to hear your perspective. Matter of fact, it's a different lecture than here, but I'll kind of give you how do relationships form. You build relationships by putting perspectives together. In other words, when I can put Luella's perspective and my perspective together, that means I have understanding of reality. And understanding is what creates relationships. But see, most people, particularly in the West, we don't want relationships. We want agreement. And agreement will kill a relationship off. It'll kill a relationship. because I don't care what you see. I don't care about your perspective, but you will care about my perspective, because what I see is reality and your perspective reality doesn't matter. And the reality is you'll never have a relationship with these folks, because what they're really wanting is for you to agree with them. That's why they're so disagreeable. I'm right, you are wrong. And this is why it's very difficult to have a healthy connected relationship with these kinds of people, because what you need to understand is forcing agreement will undo a relationship. Question for you. Just think about a number in your head. What percentage of problems in a marriage would you think are unsolvable, are actually unsolvable, that they can't be solved? They're just going to be perpetual problems all along. What percentage of problems would you think are actually unsolvable? Well, the researcher, Dr. John Gottman, who's probably the most prolific researcher on marriage, actually was able to identify a number. Now, some people think, well, 100% of problems are solvable if you communicate well. Some people might think, well, about 10%. The actual number, are you ready? 68% of problems in a marriage are unsolvable. There's just no solution to them. And what Gottman's research found was healthy, mature couples, he called them masterful couples. Masterful couples don't force agreement around unsolvable problems. That's not something they do. They see how disrespectful that is. We're just different in our perspective. We can honor that. Now, you might be asking, what are unsolvable problems? I'm glad you asked. Unsolvable problems are things around differences in child rearing, differences in culture, differences in thinking, differences in faith background. All of those create differences that are just unsolvable. But masterful couples don't allow the unsolvable problems to destroy the relationship. In toxic relationships, we're not going to find a solution. You're going to agree. And these are the traits of toxic people. And you can already sense, if you live in that, intimacy goes away, your sense of value goes away, your sense of self-esteem goes away, your self-respect goes away, your self-confidence can go away, your self-worth goes away. And that toxic person controls you. They dictate everything. And they'll also treat your children. It's just who they are. Remember, let's go back to John Van Eff's definition of a jerk. That a jerk is a person who has a pattern. There it is. It's just a way of being. It's a pattern of problematic behavior, whereby your ability to grow, mature, heal, become the better version of you is hindered. And so when you're in a relationship with these kinds of folks, you're going to find over time the love, the positive, all starts to dwindle. It starts to go away. And anger and hurt and fear and pain become the norm. Why do people stay in these unhealthy, toxic relations? It's because when you're around a toxic person, they beat you down so much that you lose a sense of value and worth for yourself. You feel like, well, this is the best I can have. At least they love me because I'm nobody. They're here, so I guess I'm good enough for them. And all this was constructed by them. You see, if you want to find freedom, you're going to have to make a decision. Number one, are you in a toxic relationship? And if the answer is yes, do you value yourself enough to say no more, to put boundaries up, to say, this ain't going to happen anymore? Well, let's end this on a positive note. Since we identified what are the traits of toxic people and how they create toxic marriages, what would be a person who's healthy? What would be a person who's mature? What would they look like then to create a loving relationship? They create a relationship that we say in our world, it creates a powerful sense of us. You know that us is in the house because because you can feel its presence and you can feel its absence. And every decision you make gives to us or it gives you, or as my mentor always taught me, everything you do brings pain or pleasure into Luella's life. If the bulk of what you do brings pleasure, she'll feel love for you. If the bulk of what you do brings pain, she's going to find it difficult to feel love for you. It is not rocket science. It is simple. It's just simple.